Behind the cathedrals and castles, out of sight of the pomp and display of kings and knights, there were millions of ordinary people. From the fields of 14th century England to the busy markets of Paris, their lives were ones of ceaseless labour, prayer, and existence. It is the forgotten story of the very foundations of medieval civilization, the peasants, artisans, and labourers who constructed the Middle Ages but have been omitted from the grand narratives of history. The hub of medieval life for ordinary people was the village. English peasants in the 14th century lived in small, compact communities of 50 to 200 people. They lived in simple dwellings, wattle and daub walls thatched over, earthen floors, and a common hearth for food and warmth. Peasants worked together to till the land, care for the animals, and tend common grounds. Life was ordered by the seasons: springtime ploughing, summer sowing, autumn harvest time, winter repair and maintenance. The church regulated spiritual and social life, with Sundays spent in Mass and religious festivals affording short intervals of respite. The children were early initiated into work, to learn farming, craftsmanship, or domestic work. Under the hardship, there lived in villages a tight-knit society. Neighbours shared labour, resources, and information, bound by survival. Disease, hunger, and feudal obligations always threatened their fragile survival, yet villages persisted as the focal point of medieval existence. Medieval commoners were bound by feudal obligations. In the 13th century in France, a peasant known as a villein rendered labour, tax, and a portion of harvest to the local lord. The day began at sunrise, and both men and women worked long hours in fields or workshops. Work was backbreaking in unfavourable weather, but efficiency and skill were appreciated. Skilled craftsmen, such as blacksmiths, weavers, and carpenters, had a bit more prestige, with town guilds. Sundays and religious holidays were the only respite, punctuated by church attendance, local fairs, and the occasional festival. Survival was never guaranteed. Poor harvests or sickness could devastate families. Peasants had little recourse in law under the strict manorial regulations that controlled movement, marriage, and trade. Despite hardship, villages promoted resilience. Oral traditions, collective feasts, and popular games provided relief and reaffirmed social bonds. The rhythm of medieval life was harsh, repetitive, and strongly tied to both nature and feudal hierarchy. Food was a constant concern of medieval common folk. Peasants in general survived on a meagre diet of bread, pottage, and vegetable matter available according to the season. Meat was a rare indulgence, typically only consumed on holidays or hunting rights granted by the lord. In early 14th century England, a household could supplement its meals with eggs, cheese, or fish if living in proximity to rivers or the sea. Malnutrition and famine were the norm, with the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 devastating vast tracts of Europe. Preservation techniques, such as salting, smoking, and fermenting, were required to survive winter. Kitchens were operated by women, who stored grains, and men often hunted or laboured with cattle. Food was simple, shared, and functional, eaten with wooden spoons or hands, free from luxury or seasoning except for salt and herbs. In spite of lack, resourcefulness and traditional knowledge enabled people to get by during lean times, and communal banquets during festivals afforded infrequent indulgence. Fashion in the Middle Ages revolved around status, practicality, and affordability. Commoners wore plain woolen, linens, or hemp clothing. Tunics and hose were worn by men in 14th century England, and women wore long dresses covered with aprons and simple headscarves. The majority of the clothing was made at home, handmade, and repaired over several seasons to wear them out. Colours were muted, browns, greys, and earth tones, since dyes were too expensive. Clothing was plain leather footwear or wooden clogs. Children's clothing was a copy of adult style, although simplified and loose. Layering because of seasonal change was important, especially cold winters. Textiles were coarse but practical for farming, work, and travel. Infrequently were festivals or church gatherings a chance to dress in a cleaner article of clothing or a brighter colour. As much as materials were lacking, the commoners were crafty, recycling leftovers and mending, so clothes built on the basis of functionality rather than vanity. Clothing was not only practical, but also a symbol of communal existence, tradition, and resilience. Health and survival were constant concerns for medieval commoners. Life expectancy was short. The average peasant did not live much past 35 to 40 years. Disease was rampant, and medical treatment was barely available. During the Black Death of 1347 to 1351, an estimated 30 to 50% of Europe's population perished, including hundreds of thousands of English, French, and Italian villagers. Malnutrition had lowered immune systems, and minor injuries could become fatal infections. Treatment was led by herbs, superstition, and folk remedies, with barber surgeons carrying out basic procedures such as bloodletting. Bathing was rare, and standards of hygiene were low, making people more vulnerable to disease. Child mortality was abnormally high, with babies frequently dying from everyday illness. In spite of these difficulties, people adjusted. Communal knowledge of remedies, storage of food with great care, and dependency on family networks were all vital to survival. Religion played a role, with prayers for divine intervention and the acceptance of death as a part of life. The Middle Ages were harsh, but resilience and communal effort allowed day-to-day life to continue even in the face of epidemic and death. Even with drudgery, medieval commoners experienced their pleasures. Saints' days, religious festivals, and holidays marked the calendar, offering momentary respite from labor. In Paris, in about 1350, Christmas or the Feast of St. John transformed streets and villages into centers of music, dancing, and revelry. Church dominated, indeed, not only for religious reasons, but also as a social center, school, and town bulletin board. Festivals, wandering performers, and folk games amused the peasants, while fairs promoted trade and cultural exchange. Music, simple instruments like lutes and flutes, and chorus singing fostered camaraderie and morale. Even the craftsmen would showcase talent during festivals, a luxury within reach otherwise. These festivals united social groups, maintained the sense of culture, and provided the commoners with a temporary escape from feudal pressures. While grueling labor filled the days, these festivals provided promise, merriment, and a sense of commonality. By the later Middle Ages, the ordinary people's existence had become a permanent part of Europe's social and economic landscape. Changes in agriculture, guilds, and village government strengthened local communities. Italian peasants in the 15th century are enrolled in village records as having negotiated rights to land, paying taxes, and serving on councils. History was preserved through oral tradition, and work and celebration continued culture. Their work built the cathedrals, castles, and cities historians would later extol. Kings, nobles, and knights populate history books, but commoners' determination bred survival and progress. Their daily routines, sacrifices, and ingenuity founded the pillars of modern European society. Remembering them illuminates not merely hardship, but also the strength, ingenuity, and enduring humanity of those too often overlooked.